When we are threatened, we react. Sometimes that means lashing out. Sometimes it means running away. Sometimes we freeze. Sometimes we fawn. But what if those aren't the only options? What if there is a third way? A way not of escape or escalation, but of transformation. Welcome to We Have a Spiritual Problem, a podcast where we confront the deeper questions beneath our personal struggles and collective crises. I am your host, Dr. Jeff Armstrong. I am not a theologian or a philosopher, or at least by training. I am a PhD exercise physiologist with an interest in the intersection of the physical and the spiritual. In today's episode, we're exploring what happens when we feel threatened or challenged, not just physically, but emotionally, socially, or spiritually. Most of us know fight or flight. Some have learned to recognize freeze or fawn. But beneath those instinctive patterns, there is another option, a third way. This idea, taught by spiritual teachers like Rob Bell and reflected in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, reveals how courage and creativity can disrupt cycles of fear and hostility. We'll look at how this third way connects to the SPIES model of wellness, how it aligns with spiritual evolution, and why it might be one of the most needed postures in today's polarized political and religious climate. Every human being is wired for survival. It's not something we choose. It's built into the architecture of our nervous system. When we perceive a threat, whether it's physical, emotional, or existential, our brain kicks into survival mode. We often call this fight or flight, but modern psychology has expanded the list: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fight, we push back, defend ourselves, strike out, or try to control the situation. Flight, we escape, withdraw, run away from the perceived danger. Freeze, we shut down, go numb, or play dead. Fawn, we appease, please, or comply to avoid danger. Each of these has a clear biological purpose. They helped our ancestors survive. If you encountered a predator, you either ran, fought, hid, or tried to appease it. These responses are still operating in us today, but the predators we face are no longer saber-toothed tigers. They're emails, deadlines, political fights, social media arguments, religious culture wars, neighborhood disputes, personal betrayals, even just feeling unseen or unheard. Our autonomic nervous system doesn't distinguish between physical danger and emotional or social threats. A disagreement at a family dinner can feel, on a physiological level, eerily similar to a threat in the wild. Our heart rate spikes, our breath shortens, our prefrontal cortex goes offline, and survival instincts kick in. But there's a crucial point. Instinct doesn't have to dictate our response. We have another option. Many spiritual teachers call the third way. It isn't passivity, it isn't aggression, it isn't submission. It's creative resistance, spiritual courage, and conscious engagement. One of the clearest illustrations of this comes from the Sermon on the Mount. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other also. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. If anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. These teachings are often misunderstood as calls for passive submission, but they're far more subversive than that. Turn the other cheek. In the first century Roman world, a backhanded slap was how a superior would humiliate an inferior. Turning the other cheek wasn't cowering, it was forcing the oppressor to treat you as an equal. Go the extra mile. Roman soldiers could legally compel civilians to carry their pack for 1 mile, no more. If someone voluntarily went 2, the soldier would be placed in an awkward situation with his superiors. Giving the cloak. By offering more than what was demanded, one exposed the injustice of the demand itself. It also forces our oppressor to see us naked. Jesus wasn't saying, let them hurt you. He was teaching a way to disrupt cycles of dominance and submission without perpetuating them. This is the third way. Theologian Walter Wink called it Jesus' third way of nonviolent resistance. Rob Bell has spent years talking about this, not as some abstract moral stance, but as a practical path to spiritual evolution. It's about standing in your dignity, refusing to return harm with harm, and also refusing to collapse. In this podcast, we often return to the SPIES model: spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social wellness. because these dimensions are not separated silos, they are interwoven. Spiritual. The third way requires grounded spiritual identity. If you don't know who you are and where your worth comes from, it's easy to default to survival mode. Spiritual formation provides the anchor point that keeps us from being swept away by fear. Physical. Our nervous system isn't abstract, it's embodied. If you want to cultivate a capacity to choose the third way, you have to train your body to tolerate discomfort. Slow breathing, grounding, movement practices, sleep, nutrition. These aren't luxuries. They are the infrastructure of resilience. Intellectual. Choosing the third way often means reframing narratives. Instead of, this person is my enemy, we begin to ask, what's happening underneath this reaction for them and for me? Intellectual clarity opens up creative options. Emotional. Fight or flight is fueled by fear, anger, shame, and grief. Emotional maturity allows us to feel those without being ruled by them. Emotional literacy gives language to what would otherwise remain primal impulse. Social. The third way is rarely a social endeavor. We need communities that model this way of being. People who embody courage without cruelty, firmness without fear, presence without passivity. Teilhard de Chardin spoke of spiritual evolution, that humanity was moving toward greater consciousness, toward what he called the omega point, a state of unified love and awareness. If that's true, then our task isn't to simply survive, but to evolve. Fight or flight keeps us locked in what might be called biological time. It's reactive, it's preconscious. The third way invites us into evolutionary time, responding from a higher level of awareness. It's the move from reaction to response, from fear to freedom. When we stand in the third way, we contribute to humanity's spiritual evolution. Every act of creative nonviolence, of love in the face of hostility, is a seed of the world we want to build. We don't have to look far to see how fight or flight plays out at scale. Politics in the United States right now feel like a chronic stress response. Every news cycle is either a punch or a panic. Religion, too, often mirrors this pattern. Fortress mentalities, culture wars, us versus them narratives, both sides convinced they're under threat, both sides reacting. When a fight or flight reflex rules our public life, polarization is inevitable. But imagine a third way in politics. Not withdrawal, not tribal combat, but courageous engagement, speaking truth, but not from fear, standing firm, but not in hatred, listening without losing your voice. Or in religion, communities that embody spiritual maturity, that refuse to mirror the hostilities of the world around them, becoming sanctuaries of courageous presence. Places where people learn how to disagree without dehumanizing. The third way isn't a slogan. It's costly. It demands spiritual maturity. But it's also liberating, because it says you don't have to live at the mercy of your survival instincts. So how do we cultivate this capacity? First, learn to recognize your stress responses. Notice, do you fight, flee, freeze, or fawn? Where does it show up in your body? What triggers it? Second, build physiological regulation practices. Practice breath work, movement, rest. Regulation comes before transformation. Third, anchor in spiritual identity. If you know who you are, beyond status, tribe, or ego, you will not need to prove it in the heat of conflict. Fourth, develop emotional language. When you can name what's happening, you don't have to act it out. Fifth, engage in community. Surround yourself with people who model the third way. This is not something we master alone. 6. Embody subversive acts of love. Just like turning the other cheek or going the extra mile, find creative ways to disrupt cycles of hostility. This isn't naive idealism. It's practical spiritual formation. It's choosing response over reaction. I've been in moments where everything in me wanted to react, defend myself, win the argument, retreat into my corner. But every time I've been able to slow down and choose something different, something shifts. Sometimes the situation, sometimes the relationship, but always me. The third way doesn't guarantee a particular outcome. It's not a technique to control others. It's a way of being that refuses to be controlled by fear. When we look at the arc of human history, we can trace our evolution from survival instincts toward higher consciousness. But that arc doesn't bend by itself. It bends through our daily choices. Through people willing to practice the third way in homes, workplaces, politics, and faith communities. When Jesus stood on that hill and said, "Turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, give your cloak also," he was showing us a different path, a path not of domination or retreat, but of transformation. That path is still before us. Thank you for joining me in this episode of We Have a Spiritual Problem. If this conversation resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. We need more people practicing the third way, not just talking about it. I'm Dr. Jeff Armstrong. Until next time, may you find the courage to stand, to stay, and to respond, not react, as we continue this journey of spiritual evolution together.